the website. And David, my co-host, my name is Ann Haynes, and I'm the CEO of the Houston Land Bank, and I'm super thrilled to see everybody here today. And we'll do our best to walk through a brief introduction of the organization, as well as introduction to the RFQ that I'm assuming many of you have seen since you're here. And we will certainly try and answer as many questions as entered through the chat function throughout this session. And this recording will be available on the website as well. And please, if you have questions, they can always be sent to info@houstonlandbank.org. And we will be posting answers to questions on the website after the deadline of the 24th of June, Wednesday at 5 o'clock. It probably will not be there at 5:01, but we will do our best to have those answers up there as quickly as possible. Thank you so much for joining. And again, I'm Ann Haynes, and David, you can unmute and greet people with a description on how to enter questions. Is my co-host, David Benson. And somehow you're not coming through.
That'll work.
Yep.
Just one more reminder for folks as we're starting up, and I'm going to send a group chat note out for this on this as well. Reminder that if you do have questions during the presentation, please feel free to text them to me in the group chat. We'll be keeping track of all those. If you think of one after the meeting, as Ann pointed out, you can always send it to info@houstonlandbank.org. And while we will respond verbally to the questions that we get in the meeting, please remember that our official answers as put forward by the organization will be those that we put in writing up on our website, which is to say, if you feel that you perceive any conflict between what you heard said today and what you see written, the written version will prevail.
Great. Thank you, David. Okay, so in all sorts of awkward Zoom moments, my share screen doesn't seem to be working, so there may be a little bit of a transition before I can get you all on my PowerPoint. So I'm going to ask Dave to clarify when he sees this, whether or not he's seeing the right screen. Dave, do you see the screen or do you see my PowerPoint?
I see your PowerPoint in PowerPoint.
Yes.
So
okay.
not the full screen view, but
Yeah,
I do see the presentation.
Give it a shot here. Do you see screen now?
Yes, I see a title slide. Yep.
Okay, great. Thank you. The interface isn't working quite right, so it wasn't clear. The Houston Land Bank, this is just an introduction to the organization for those of you who don't know us. Our mission is pretty straightforward. We acquire land, we strategically acquire, dispose, and steward abandoned, damaged property and vacant property into productive use. Really, the goal being catalyzing transformative community economic development for the city of Houston. We are a 20-year-old organization formerly known as the Land Assemblage Redevelopment Authority, which was set up for this very function. In 2018, we were renamed and reorganized into the Houston Land Bank, and we remain a local government corporation for the city of Houston. Our board incorporates appointees from the city, the Houston Mayor's Office, as well as City Council, the HISD Independent School District for Houston, as well as the county of Harris County. I would just like to mention that we're really formally looking at ways to be more about transformation, not just about transactions of land sales, although that is the majority of what we do to develop and provide affordable housing for the city of Houston. We're really committed to being a good neighbor in communities, from our lawn maintenance all the way to our engagement with future builders and community members in the communities that we serve. We really are looking to find the best uses for the sites that support the community needs. Primarily, this is affordable housing, but as we look forward in our next few years, we'd really like to demonstrate our ability to support community and economic development uses in our communities. We collaborate with partners on key initiatives to be able to support equitable and transformative development. And we're looking to really provide additional transparent access to data or activities and operations. So we have upgrades to websites on a routine basis, and we will continue to provide additional materials and information to people as we develop. And we're also involved in continuous best practices, because I know that land banks are more and more important to the organization or to the city as a whole. And the country. If anyone saw the City Lab article just the other day, we were mentioned in the national article about how land banks may be a key to community revitalization, given some future forecasts on the economics of our cities. Accomplishments to date, again, we've been in business for about 20 years, and really over that time have sold approximately 712 properties. We've brought about $76 million back into the market, property values that previously were vacant and abandoned properties and now are tax income producing, but ultimately that tax income stabilizing neighborhoods with an increased land value. We have about 45 properties in development currently, and in 2015, we estimate about $1 million back to the taxing entities. We still have over 500 properties in our inventory. A number of them are reserved for programs with the housing department of the city of Houston. And we are, again, as a good neighbor, looking to engage community members in our work in communities as we both maintain and sell land. This is a graph that shows kind of our whole history over the time of LARA to Houston Land Bank. And most importantly on this slide is that in the last couple of years, through a transition process, which included some reorganization, some hiring of staff. We have 8 staff now currently working for the land bank, and certainly putting our properties back up for sale after a year or two of really trying to finish out some old contracts with builders and ultimately get some new guidelines and programs in place. And part of that is really putting a whole new slate of service providers, consultants, and other contractors in place with new contracts so that we have all of the networks of people and resources that we need to do the work best. This is a map, actually, sorry about that. Fast fingers. Okay, so this is a map that shows our clusters of property. And of course, one of the things about Houston in terms of its scale and size, it is hard to fit on an 8.5 by 11 slide. So for those of you who are familiar with Houston, we've historically had majority of our lots through the tax foreclosure process, whether we received at strike-off or through the auction. And they were mostly located in areas that were significantly underserved neighborhoods of Houston: Acres Home, Trinity Gardens, 5th Ward, 3rd Ward, and Sunnyside. And those properties had been in our inventory for many years, although they've been slowly being sold off after the foreclosure crisis in 2008, 2009. One of the things to note is that we still retain a cluster of properties in 3 neighborhoods, although we still have singular properties in many of the neighborhoods: Sunnyside, Sedegast, and Trinity Gardens. And we're going to be speaking a little bit more about Sedegast today, but I wanted to make sure that you saw this picture. There is a map on our website where you can actually zoom in and see some of these different properties. And as you can imagine, on a daily basis, the overall inventory does fluctuate with houses and lots sold and then other properties that may come into the land bank. So please continue to visit that website. We have 2 primary programs right now in terms of lot sales and house construction. Our traditional program, we are calling the HLB Approved Builder Program, has been running for most of our time. We take lots that we receive and we sell them to builders who then accomplish a home at an affordable price based on our guidelines for that sale. The builder themselves actually transfer that house to the home buyer, and those home buyers must be 120% and below AMI, workforce housing. Although, of course, through that program, we do have builders that provide a variety of different products at different price points. The other program that we've been working on significantly in partnership with the Housing and Community Development Department is the New Home Development Program. This is a little bit more unique in the sense that we retain the land, the city procures the builder, the house is built on our lot, and we sell directly to the home buyer. This is something that we've been ramping up in the last couple of years and has been able to due to the subsidies provided by the Housing and Community Development Department, we are able to reach 80% AMI and in some cases down to 40% AMI through a sale to the community land trust and that home buyer simultaneously. This is the traditional program that we have, and right now we are currently selling lots in the Sunnyside area and are about to have a second round of lot sales that will be in multiple neighborhoods. In 2019, we sold 59 houses to home buyers, and this was mostly due to prior lot sales to builders over the last few years. We also updated our program guidelines, and we've also collected or created a new qualified pool of builders. We will be looking annually for builders for our program in our qualified pool, and that qualified pool is eligible to purchase lots from us. As of June, we have about 13 houses sold. We may actually have 2 more that have closed in the past couple of weeks, and we're about to post new lots for sale in round 2. And again, as I mentioned, these homes are targeted to 120% and below AMI and below. The New Home Development Program, as I said, is the activity that we're working on with the Housing and Community Development Department, and really allows us to stretch our houses for sale to a lower AMI and really increasing that range of affordability for our home buyers. And I would just say, because I'm realizing I may have not clarified, most of our neighborhoods are primarily single-family home neighborhoods, and most of our products are single-family homes. And I think that one of the most important things with this program is that we're also under a grant to be able to acquire additional tracts of land on the market from any owner, any vacant land, which allows us to again build our inventory of land for the foreseeable future. So this conversation today is really about this. I would say it's a 2-for-1 RFQ/RFP, and it may have caused some questions. So that's what our goal is today, is to walk through what we're looking for. Part 1 is really an RFQ for planning and real estate and it's not marketing services, market analysis services. We're building a pool of qualified service providers supporting small to medium planning analysis activities in a variety of neighborhood settings over the next few years. The RFP specifically is for a very particular neighborhood plan in an area where it is a really unique, very close to the center of the city, single family home neighborhood, really important workforce housing neighborhood for the city of Houston. But we have an area, I believe it's about 70 acres, but I have to go back to the number in the RFQ, without any infrastructure. So it's really an important moment to take a look at this from a comprehensive neighborhood perspective. And really, given the work that Mayor Turner and his administration has really pursued, the Complete Communities Initiative, looking very comprehensively at neighborhoods, it is important that as we're looking at the future of this neighborhood, we're thinking about it from everything from market demand to what the level and development of infrastructure is available to this neighborhood. Okay, so now I'm going to try and move this to another screen. And David, you're going to have to be my co-pilot here to make sure that I'm actually showing what people need to see. And just a reminder to everybody, do we see the RFP, David?
Yes.
Yay!
Yes.
Okay. All right. So in terms of just questions, if you all have questions, please remember to use the chat function, and all questions are accepted, and we'll go through them towards the end, and answers will be formally posted on the website for those of you who have joined later. Again, I'm going to just really walk through the basics of this RFQ, that essentially outline what we're looking for. Part A is really this general planning pool of qualified consultants. And expected over the next couple of years, we assume that there will be a few small and a few large areas of the city that we would be looking for help from planning and market analysis consultants. So we're really looking for teams and consultants that can suit many of the needs that are listed in this RFQ. We're looking for those that can help us look at supporting housing and amenity planning efforts in these markets and be able to essentially provide us with some external expertise to our staff capacity to be able to develop our thinking around certain parts of the neighborhoods that we're working in, as well as particular lots that we may be considering acquiring. We're really looking to make sure that we're finding teams and consultants that support our holistic and resilient planning efforts and really thinking through all of the 2020 Houston needs, from the resiliency, from flood control, from the ability to look creatively at developing really a variety of different housing types to meet the community's needs, as well as community amenities. This is really important for us as we are sort of new in the organizational venture for partnering with external planning firms, but we have very close relationships with the Complete Communities Department, as well as our friends at the Planning Department, and we'll certainly be in concert and working with them throughout this process and many of our small test fits. Again, we believe that there will be at least 3 to 5 small test fits that we would have to do on everything from a lot that we might acquire that may be multiple acres to very small lots of 25,000 square feet, or even prototypes for single family housing. It's important to also think about the other kinds of studies that we might be doing in certain neighborhoods where we're either looking to sell or looking to acquire properties throughout Houston. Being able to look at some demand analysis on the types of housing that Houstonians and these neighborhoods are looking for, as well as some of the amenities that would balance out those housing needs. So that is really part A, is just a pool of qualified consultants. In order to then submit for the RFP, which has the same timeline, these are kind of running concurrently, you do need to be qualified through the Part A process, and we'll describe the submission requirements. The RFP requires you to actually look more specifically at the neighborhood in question and respond to the specific scope outline that we have created. This is important because it is helpful to make sure that the qualifications meet our general needs, but at the same time, very specifically of the team that you might be providing in the general RFQ, what aspects of that RFQ or team would you be really utilizing for this effort specifically? It's about 130 acres. I'm sorry, 70 acres was from a different neighborhood memory. That is, and we'll go to the map at the end, but it's a really, really unique area within a very important residential neighborhood. It is interesting because the streets have been platted and mapped, and there's been a history in this neighborhood of discussing the planning for this area, or at least the development of this area. And in fact, 10 years ago, this organization, the city, as well as a major property owner in this neighborhood, spoke very much in detail about advancing the planning and advancing the development here. But I think given what has happened in the last 10 years, from our knowledge of resilient neighborhoods and the development of Houston and the market changes that have happened, this is a really critical time for us to take a look at this area again. And I think that, just so you know, we have approximately 53 parcels in this area, single family lots, except some of them are larger, some of them are smaller, variety of different sizes. And there is a significant amount of lots that we have in the overall area of Settegast. So this is sort of a pocket within a larger neighborhood. We are interested in the planning being very specific to the infrastructure undeveloped area, except that it needs to be sort of a seamless transition and support to the larger Settegast neighborhood. You can read here, but we are looking to put together a core client team, really, which would be working with the consultant on a regular basis, and through the Houston Land Bank, coordinating very directly with members of the Planning Department, Public Works, and the Housing Department, all of whom are really interested in the future of this neighborhood, as well as the Complete Communities team and our Chief Resilience Officer. It's important, given the amount of land and the amount of development that could happen in this area, that we're really doing this in a coordinated fashion. I'm going to go through the details I think I described of the Houston Land Bank and go straight to the timeline. It is very aggressive, and I think that especially with planning firms, all of your expertise, and I'm very excited to see a number of you here, we believe that you will be able to meet this deadline, and we will be watching in the next couple of weeks with questions coming in to see if this would need to be extended a week or two. But please know that right now the intention is to close this on July 8th at 5 o'clock. We are really interested in any of your questions in the next couple of days, specifically as you look into this and see how you might want to participate. Especially, you may want to just participate in the RFQ, but we welcome your submissions towards the RFP. We would really like to look at hiring the best team that we can for this very important neighborhood in Houston. We really anticipate getting moving quite quickly. I think time is of the essence to really look at what a short and longer term scenario is around this neighborhood. We hope to be selecting people by August and getting straight to work. Just to go through the scopes of work, and I won't go through every last line item, but comprehensive scope components, you can see this is truly a pretty broad spectrum of needs that we may have in the next few years. I will say that it is important, as a former architect and planner who is familiar with a number of efforts that go into putting together a team for these. I know many of you probably have people you have worked with in the past, and developing a team that has the breadth of these types of resources would be ideal, although we do welcome responses from independent providers that have some, if not all, of these expertise. And we will do our best to review your submittal to understand specifically what types of scope you can best approach. And I would truly request that in your statement response, you are very clear to this set of line items in terms of what you're able to provide from your firm. Primarily in market analysis, we're really interested in taking a look at the demand for housing and the demand of any other community facilities, looking at both realistic and implementable real estate solutions for those markets. Urban programming and community engagement, firms that have an expertise in reaching neighborhoods. I know we're all in a new world of even, everything from online and very unique socially distant engagement strategies, but this is important for us to be a good neighbor and ultimately work with the communities and stakeholders in those communities to develop these plans. Even when we're looking at an analysis for a particular parcel that may be a potential acquisition, that would not be sort of your traditional community engagement, but really understanding how to reach the community, understand previous efforts communities have done in terms of plans or other requests to the city, so that we can really understand the needs of the community from any activity that we do. Master urban planning at the site and neighborhood scale. This is really traditional urban planning in the sense that we're looking from everything from mapping to being able to look at an analysis of land use, as well as providing scenarios, conceptual scenarios that would communicate the various ways the neighborhood could be developed. Specifically to the RFQ for Setagas, this is going to be important from an infrastructure planning perspective, including transportation, looking at different road types and roadways so that we can develop an infrastructure sort of timeline and budget, as no streets quite exist yet. People that have parking, ability to look at parking, and certainly those that are familiar with the Houston area, Certainly there's some ordinances that have changed in the last few years and ordinances that are being looked at to increase the quality of life and walkability in a variety of different neighborhoods. And this neighborhood of Sedagast and others is no exception to that. Certainly we are interested in looking at the understanding of kind of the economics behind neighborhoods and making sure that we're really attentive to the connection between neighborhoods just as much as the neighborhoods themselves. Development feasibility, again, and this is part of a comprehensive list for firms that have these skills or some of these skills to be part of our qualified pool of builders. Development feasibility, this is critical in terms of really understanding test fits for building massing options, looking at potential costs and development costs for the development of such projects, and as well as some pro forma analysis to kind of review what sort of real estate or development options we have, as well as cost benefit analysis of different special districts as it applies to our particular work. Economic and fiscal impact. This is not anticipated to be a heavy lift here. We're looking to make sure that we've got people that understand the relationship between development and economic and fiscal impact. So that is one thing where I think you need to detail what your expertise in that area would be and ultimately how you approach different assignments. Part B is optional, but of course that is part of the 2-for-1 RFQ/RFP that we've got going here. The proposal for the neighborhood development plan of Sedagast. We are looking in the next few months to really start looking at a vision for this neighborhood. And again, this conversation about the development of this neighborhood has been on the table for at least 10 years, probably longer. But this is important to receive, like today's 2020 vision, both from community, from stakeholders, from leadership, from development entities, to really kind of understand what the full build out options would be in this area. We really want to make sure that these ideas and vision is grounded and implementable as part of this plan. There will be more comprehensive master planning done in a future phase for more specific solutions. This is really looking at getting a visioning and programming to be able to develop an infrastructure plan and ultimately some costs related to that infrastructure and an ability to develop that infrastructure. Phase 2, which really would be concurrently with phase 1, is starting to look at the site yield, the preliminary site design concept options. This is to help support the programming, helping to support the need in the infrastructure, and ultimately highly conceptual versions of what the yield on the site could be. The site meaning that area of Sedagast, which we will show in a moment. This is really not about fully developed plans. That is something that would come in a little bit later strategy, which would be the phase 3 and beyond. Phase 3 is the land use test fits with corresponding real estate pro formas. This is again at a highly conceptual level, phase 3, but phase 1 of that kind of exercise, to be able to understand what the implementable base infrastructure phases would be and the necessary community amenities. This may include unique community amenity sites in a neighborhood plan. It will certainly include probably a thinking of typologies of housing that would be used, certainly a balance of what's expected to be primarily single family, but as Houston looks at its planning and ordinances around single family, that may involve certain blocks that would have a slightly denser development. And again, this is to be tested during this phase. The most important thing that coming out of this would really be an understanding of what the infrastructure needs would be so that we can develop a phasing plan to really get that development happening as quickly as possible in this area, as well as development that really suits the community needs and Houston's needs in general. This is, again, a fairly aggressive look, but I want to remind everybody that we're still looking at very high-level assumptions about most of the aspects of this planning of this neighborhood, and really trying to kind of work very closely with the client team, which would include members of city department staff as well as stakeholders in the neighborhood. We would anticipate that the vision piece of that scope will have most of the community engagement. The development of the infrastructure, until we sort of see, you know, how much, how big, and what some pathways for financing that infrastructure, it is not anticipated that we would do a deep dive into community engagement on the solutions. Ultimately, that master planning would continue after we understand what the infrastructure phasing would be, and that would certainly have a significant amount of community engagement in that process. The RFP, the start would be as soon as we can in August. That is our goal. And really working through September for those phases 1 and 2, and then looking to have a preliminary strategy finalized so that we can move forward. There are edges of this neighborhood, of the area that has no infrastructure, where both we have lots, there are quite a few developers that do have lots that are accessible to existing infrastructure. So the edges of this area will continue to be developed and built out. Therefore, we'd really like to leverage the opportunity of some of those developments to mostly to the west, but at the surrounding areas, to really start catalyzing increased investment and development within this area. This is our evaluation and selection criteria. Evaluation criteria for qualification of firms or teams. Pretty straightforward, but we're really looking for teams and that have something working with municipalities in comprehensive planning and implementation. Please demonstrate in your application projects that really reflect the similar types of work. We are looking for people that have interest and also experience in developing mixed use, mixed income communities. This is a really interesting and unique area of Setagast, and it's going to be interesting experience to really look at what the right mix is so that we can secure and assure affordability in this neighborhood. Experience with market analysis and real estate valuation, and this is from 2 fronts, really looking at both kind of the potential yield and amount of development, just as much as it is looking at the infrastructure and how we may finance that. And that would go back and forth between kind of what the potential development is and ultimately what can be financed. We're really looking for innovative approaches to community engagement, not just because we're in COVID and more remote, but increasingly because of that. We certainly want this to be a grounded solution that will be met with engagement from the neighborhood and from the neighborhood surrounding. We really need people that demonstrate meeting client needs in a timely, thoughtful, and thorough manner. So this is going to come from either references and explanation from you all of how you've been able to meet this. It will be a client group that will be as best organized to have quick responses and be able to be efficient at our ability to work with you all. And so I think that we're just looking for an efficient process with a good team structure in that sense. We're looking for a demonstration of team and personnel that represent the diversity of the neighborhoods. It's increasingly important that we are working with consultants and working with firms that both understand our deep commitment to the neighborhood and are able to communicate and reach the neighborhood in a variety of different ways. We certainly appreciate HUB MWBE certification, but any certification of a similar type would be accepted. It is really helpful to us that we have you know, a comprehensive team or teams that actually understand Houston and know Houston and its neighborhoods. We will be looking to probably pre-qualify no more than 5 to 7 teams and firms. This may depend based on if we receive primarily larger comprehensive teams and or lots of more smaller firms. What we're looking to do is have enough people in the stable to work in different parts of the city and it possibly concurrently at the same time. Some of these initial jobs or initial tasks may be quite small, but certainly looking for firms that could stretch to a whole neighborhood scale as much as it can be independent neighborhoods or sites. And so from those that will be pre-qualified, we will then be selecting from those that submit to the Settegast East Houston Development Strategy. And we're really looking to understand the degree that the proposal reflects the work performed and that your understanding of it, recognizing that as we develop this initial scope, as we go, things may change, and certainly wanting to at least get to our preliminary plan and preliminary outcomes as identified in this RFQ. We're looking for the experience relevant to the work to be performed. So some things about phasing, understanding that infrastructure financing component, public finance component, and understanding how we might start to leverage some of the development that is happening to the west to really sort of catalytically affect the neighborhood as a whole and be able to develop this neighborhood. We're looking for customer service, creativity, and flexibility, because as we all know in this time, as much as we think we know where we're heading, we have an intuition of what we're trying to achieve, but there will be discoveries along the way. And we will want to work very closely with this team as an extension of our own company. So that goes through that. This required response materials, I'm going to very briefly go through this, and since I'm in sharing screen, I can't quite see if a lot of questions are coming in, but David will be teed up to walk through questions that have come in. Really what we're looking for, and please limit to 20 pages. This is a digital submission. Please be aware that when you're sending a digital submission, it will be through email. We have a large enough capacity to be able to receive larger files, but please reduce it down. Most of these will be transmitted electronically, and we want to be able to engage enough of our committee members in this review process. So cover letter and really an introduction, identification of persons authorized to propose, and making sure that the firm is doing part A or part B. Or both. It's certainly important for us to get a summary of your firm approach to urban development, planning and programming for neighborhoods, and especially how the new development fits into an existing neighborhood. So this is really a request to give us your firm strategy or your firm point of view. And at the same time, it is important that this is specifically for all kinds of different activities that might happen. Again, this is for part A, but specifically what your firm is used to, what kind of context you're used to working in, and what your point of view is for working in neighborhoods. Recent and demonstrated experience, please provide projects that are similar in scope or especially similar clients. So if you've worked as an on-call contractor for similar types of activities, that would be really helpful to know. Proposed personnel, this would be not every last person that might provide services, but certainly the sort of lead project managers and lead principals in organizations, so that we at least have a sense of who we will be working with. And again, because it's 20 pages, you all may have boilerplate ways of providing this, but please just do your best to kind of show the diversity of the team in terms of expertise and skill sets, and being able to support what has been listed on that comprehensive list. Proposed fee and standard rate sheet. The fixed fee proposal per phase is actually for Part B of Settegast, so we need to update that. This would be really a standard rate sheet to show us with these on-call contracts what that kind of work would cost us, and we would probably do it as a time and materials based Part A qualifications RFQ. References. We do need at least 2 names, but no more than 4, and ideally with clients that you've worked with but are similar to ours. whether it's a municipality or local government corporation. We do have a page about required minimum insurance coverage. If you have specific questions on that, please write to info@houstonlandbank.org. We are not intending to disqualify people simply for insurance purposes, but we have to understand your status on why you may or may not be able to achieve that insurance coverage as recommended. And again, certifications and also demonstration of eligibility for this type of certification if you do not have the certification itself. Part B, so this is the specifics. It's optional as part of this RFQ. We're happy to hear from firms that would like to work with us that are not interested in this particular proposal, but those that are, please make it clear on your cover page that you are applying for both parts. And that really this additional statement is specific to this neighborhood strategy planning, as that may be a little bit more detailed than what you've provided in the RFQ. If it, especially because it may not be all of the specialties that you may have provided for the RFQ, make it just clear in this statement exactly what parts of your RFQ would be primary for this RFP. In this case, we need a specific fee proposal based on a phasing and milestone outline provided. So in that scope outline, what we're intending for that. Again, I know that that could mean a broad range of services and or thoughts, but given the timeline and thought process around really some high level responses from the planning side, but more specifics to phasing and strategy, and making sure that we're kind of accommodating and making final assumptions with our client group about yield and ultimately infrastructure phasing. Options for alternative phasing or core scope elements and related fees. This is really a little bit more of a way of us understanding how you might approach this problem. You know, in fact, the way that we're looking at this is based on things and outcomes that we need to sort of see and understand in a short period of time, but perhaps from another project that you have worked on, you have an alternative phasing concept or a way of doing the phasing that you could share here. And if you don't, that's fine. This is just looking for some feedback from this community, because we know you have quite a bit of experience throughout different parts of the city and possibly the country. And it really, unfortunately, this time is no guarantee of work. We really are thrilled to see so many people here today, because this does help us understand that we are a valuable part of the ecosystem of planning and development in Houston, as we are really focused on affordable housing, especially given the increased challenges to affordable housing in our neighborhoods, and especially looking at the best way to accommodate development to make sure that we're assuring that affordability and assuring the kind of community amenities that really create transformative environments for Houstonians. So that concludes my walkthrough. Sorry to make you dizzy as I flip through this. I'm going to stop share for them. Oh, actually, I was going to go to the map, which is at the end here. Yeah, this is probably one of the more important places to end. Sorry, folks. So this is the map that was included. Again, you can zoom in on our website. We should have had the link here on the sheet, but on HoustonLandBank.org properties, go to the map. It takes a few seconds to load, but you'll be able to kind of scroll around. This, I don't know if you can see my cursor, but this is the overall set of lots that we have in the Setagast area. The area without infrastructure is really the area here. And the gray dots just mean these properties are on hold simply because they are without access and infrastructure. You can see there are a few along the edge, both that may be available for sale in the future. And we have a couple of north of Houghton and south of Taft as well. The area that we are looking to do the primary infrastructure development is really this area here. Connecting to existing street network, connecting to existing networks of open space, as well as looking to improve the amenities within this neighborhood based on the overall community's needs. So I think that you can, again, zoom in on the Zoom app so you can actually see the parcels on HCAD, which is the assessment district. I'm sorry, Houston, I'm like Harris County Appraisal District. Sorry, I'm losing my thoughts here, but you can certainly zoom in and see that they have been platted. There are streets that are drawn, they just do not exist. And certainly something that we're really looking to right size all of the infrastructure in this neighborhood for the needs of Houston 2020 and beyond. So that is that. And what I'm going to do is, again, because of the number of people, and thank you so much all for joining. It's really actually quite a thrill to have you all on the phone or on Zoom here. But we will go through chat. So if you have additional questions, please, and we'll be hoping to answer them. Yep.
We have 3 right now. The first one I think you can see from Ms. Bell. There are environmental concerns within the scope of the area these lots are based in. Is there a plan to address those concerns? Would there be an opportunity to provide some kind of relief efforts and resolution during the building process?
Yes, I would say that we are not looking, we'll provide a formal answer. It was not looking to be a significant environmental assessment, but ultimately I think any planning firm would absolutely look at any potential, like a phase 1, but at a complete neighborhood scale, looking at anything that may have actually affected the environmental conditions of any of the lots. So certainly a scan would be important and necessary at this step. And certainly we'll be looking at whether or not that would require a very specific phase or additional phase to do a little bit more detailed planning from an environmental perspective. And absolutely, I think that ultimately the development itself, if there is anything that is identified as something that needed to be cleaned up or looked at, that would have to affect both the phasing and development schedule and development planning in the area. But at this time, we'll be looking to do a scan to understand generally what potential threats there have been to this neighborhood, and certainly, what type of, I would say, influences may have an environmental effect, distance to the highway, things like that. So I think it is very important, but it will still stay high level, as most of the planning efforts will be in this particular phase. And again, we will absolutely formally respond to these questions. So please check back on the website no later than Friday, but we're hoping to get them out next day on the 25th.
All right, our next question, do divider and cover pages count toward the page limit?
Oh, that's always my favorite question. So they do not. So, well, actually, so dividers, cover page, no. Dividers, yes. So please limit dividers, because we're really trying to understand the information, and the reason why it is a shorter is just to keep down on the level of additional documents that get filled in. And we certainly will let you all know if that page limit is extended. I know that especially for the RFQ, you may be putting together quite a number of firms that could be accessible to you. Prioritize the primary firms that would be involved and list firms that you would normally and routinely work with that has additional expertise that you do not have in-house, to try and keep it to shorter limits if that's possible. So cover page, no. Dividers, yes. And that I'm just trying to think through how we've done this in the past for attachments. On occasion, for certain RFQs, when we ask for significant financials, those can be attachments, but we're not asking for that here. We really want to know the team, the expertise, the examples of projects that you've worked on.
All right, the third question is really 2 parts or 2 questions. One, assuming that I believe the question is intended to be, is HLB looking for full consultant teams representing all the required expertise for both Part A and Part B? And Matthew, please shoot me a note if I'm getting that wrong.
Yes, and actually, I'm seeing the chat now. So we're looking for either for the RFQ, full consultant teams that have all the expertise, as well as firms that are interested in working with us over the next 2 years that may not be able to do all the expertise. So if you are an environmental lawyer and you would like to work on environmental review process for a particular test fit that we do and you want to answer the RFQ, you can be a singular provider, but just make it very clear that you're a singular provider for a particular scope of work. We are also looking for a comprehensive team. Those that are trying to pre-qualify to do Part B, that is more likely to be comprehensive teams, simply because we absolutely need to work at a very quick pace. And so we're looking for people that are comprehensive teams. We may be able to, if we have a specific project within Part B that we do not assume in our current scope, we would be able to use our RFQ consultants to add to that expertise or add to those teams. But for right now, comprehensive consultant teams and smaller firms that provide a scope for Part A, which is the RFQ pool of providers. And for Part B, it is recommended that you are applying as a full consultant team to meet the specific needs of what Part B is. But it is possible that if you're in Part A and pre-approved, that you could be pulled into that work if we need an additional expertise that we can't suit from that consultant team. And that does certainly make it a little bit more complicated for some of you all. And this is a unique way of trying to do an RFP and an RFQ at the same time. So please understand that as we provide some direction on this, it will be on our website.
All right, and the second half of that question is whether there's an anticipated budget for the Gas project. I apologize.
That's a great question. We will provide that in our formal question and answer. There's an expected range, and I think what I want to just is put a cross T on that one, and we'll put a formal response to that on our website. And I
similar question.
Those questions, yeah, and I think that's an important one, so people know how to right size the scope for the actual expected kind of scope for the consideration of this particular scope of work. And actually, I would just say that if those of you who are asking questions, please check back on the website, and we will post this hopefully on Thursday, the answers to questions that we receive. And as well, if you are interested, I would request that you actually, if you're interested in actually submitting, please send your email address to info@houstonlandbank.org and just say, to make sure that we get you and let you know that things are posted. We can't do that formally, so please go back and look at the website, but there's 40 people on now, and I certainly want to make sure that we've got enough people to spread the word as much as possible as soon as we post the answers.
All right, one or two more quick questions here, and then I think after those we will probably wrap and take everything else in writing. We had a question, you should be able to see this one, how does the land bank view collaboration with local citizen-led groups?
I find that it's critical. So I think that that's what we've tried to express in this RFQ, that we need firms and teams that understand that the community-led approach is very much part of our thinking process on any neighborhood, including this one in Setagast. In this particular exercise, I think the vision creation is sort of one that would be much more developed with the community in mind. And again, given COVID, we're in kind of a new territory of how we can accomplish that. The infrastructure planning, simply because we're really trying to figure out how much will it cost and what is the right phasing approach to kind of meet both the development expectations, and I would say so that we can afford the infrastructure, but at the same time, you know, there may be a few options that are informed by the vision, informed by what the community said, but until we sort of understand how big is the breadbox on that particular infrastructure plan, it may not be widely shared, although we are trying to put together a client group that would include sort of advisory neighborhood leaders and stakeholders that have been working in the area already, so that it is, again, completely informed as best as possible. We certainly would anticipate a larger planning process with much more direct community input as we start to put pen to paper more specifically for the full build out. But in this case, I think the vision piece of that scope is absolutely making sure that we're kind of grounding the future of this neighborhood in what the community has anticipated, wanted, verbalized, and certainly, you know, making sure that all development expectations kind of suit that.
All right, one last question, ma'am. How would you like to see respondents answer the comprehensive scope components? Are you seeking the what or how?
Oh, that's a great question. Well, I think because of the length of time that you have to respond to this and the size limit of the proposal, we're looking for firms that are able to show that they have teams that can provide the expertise. Think that there's probably ways that we can do this differently than what's anticipated right now, but I think the most important thing is that you identify that in your response you have firms that can provide the services in those larger categories, assuming that if they can do the larger categories, they can do some of the sub bullet points, if that makes sense. And it really is the what in one sense, but the how should come in your point of view statement, the statement that's required for part A and part B. I think the how would be best represented in those descriptions, those narratives. I hope I answered the question that was intended.
We will accept follow-ups.
Yes. Yes, please. Please email any additional questions to info@houstonlandbank.org. And we certainly would like to post this as soon as we can after 5 o'clock on Wednesday when questions are due. And we really, really would like to partner with many of you larger comprehensive firms and teams, as well as individual providers that may have a particular skill set. And the more specific you can be in those narratives and those intros, we can understand exactly how we can work with you in the future. And again, you know, answering this RFQ/RFP is the best way for us to know that you're out there, and we certainly would love to find the great talent pool that I can see in this participant list as a part of our partners working in the neighborhoods of Houston going forward. Thank you all for joining. If there's no more questions, stay open for another 5 minutes or so. Okay. I can't believe we were that clear. It's always hard to get through everything in something like this, but we really appreciate your interest in working with the Houston Land Bank.